Hey, what's up? If you clicked on this, you're probably looking at wheel spacers for your G80, have them, looking to change them, or you're just looking to watch a video with a G80 in it, which I totally get. But I'm gonna run through a small detail that I think a lot of people miss. I certainly did in the past before I knew what to look for, and I think it's gonna help. A lot goes into choosing your wheel spacers, what brand, what quality, what size, making sure it's the right fitment, center bore size, bolt pattern, all these things matter. The quality of the machine, aluminum, whatever you're using, that makes a difference. But also, not everything is perfect, not everything is machined perfectly, even though it's pretty darn close most of the time. So there's one thing I've learned that you need to check to make sure you're safe and to make sure you don't have any issues with wheel bearing, failure down the road, any kind of wheel wobble. So I'm gonna run over what that is and how to prevent it. So those of you that have followed my videos, you've already seen my wheel spacer and stud conversion kit. So I'm not gonna do an install tutorial on that today. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it right here. So basically I've got 12.5s on the front and I've got 15 millimeters on the rear. The reason for this video, besides the tip I'm gonna give you guys what to look for to be safe, is I'm swapping the 15 millimeters in the back out for 12.5s. You know, since I put the 15s on originally, the suspension was stock and it looked really good for stock height. I think as a progression, if you're getting a G80 and you're just looking to space it for now before suspension, I think the 15 rear, 12.5 front looks really, really good. And once again, click on that video link, take you back to the last video. I do a good before and after of what you can see of how that looks on stock height. So now my AST suspension is installed, which means that the car is sitting a lot lower. And to me, even though 15s are aggressive on the rear, I think that it's a little too aggressive because I'm starting to get rubbing, even without people in the back. You can actually see a little line. I don't know if you guys can see or not. If I get up close, you can see a little line that runs up and down here, and it's actually touching the car on the fender as I hit bumps. Really at high speed is where I've seen it. On ramps, that sort of thing. The small dips on the road at high speed, the suspension travels a lot lower now, so it doesn't have much room to spare, and the tire really sticks out. I mean, it's flush, but there's not much room there for it to kind of, the camber to help to kick it up in the wheel well. So as you guys know, I want the car to look good, but function is more important to me than anything. So I'm actually taking the 15s off, putting 12.5s on the rear. So if you take a look right here, this side is the 15. I haven't touched it yet, but off camera, I went ahead and did the 12.5 rear on this side. So we've got just enough room. I mean, it sits flush. The outside of the tire looks really, really good. But if I added some weight, some bigger dudes in the back, then, or whatever I have that I usually carry, or just hit some bumps that require the suspension to move a little bit more and travel, it's gonna actually allow me to kick it up in there. I think it's gonna work a little bit better, and it still looks really good. Once again, on this side with the 15s to me are pretty aggressive. I mean, the outside edge of the tire is outside of the fender, so doesn't leave a lot of room for movement there. So for me, a little too aggressive, so we're swapping them out. All right guys, over here on the workbench, here's one of the new 12s. Here's the 15 off the driver's side, which I told you I've already done. And you can definitely see it's not much of a difference. I mean, 2.5 millimeters obviously, but it's enough for the wheel to travel and hide and tuck up underneath the wheel well so I don't rub in the rear, because I definitely don't want any rubbing. I just solved the front rubbing issue on the G80. If you didn't see that video of the R44 liner kit, I'll also link it right here. No issues on 12.5s in the front. With the AST suspension, I got the R44 enhanced clearance liner kit install, even with the Turner Motorsport skid plate install that added some, or that minimized some clearance room, which I talked about in that video. Everything's good, there's no issues in the front. But once the AST got installed, I think the 15s are just a little too aggressive for the setup. So we're gonna try some 12.5s and see how that does. So as I mentioned, what to look for. It's very simple, and I think a lot of people overlook it. In one sentence, it's ensuring that the spacer is flat up against the hub, that there is no warpage, making sure there's no imperfections to the point where when the spacer is mounted up against the hub, it doesn't wobble at all, because that's the death of your wheel bearing. That's not what you want. It could be a safety thing if you're on the track, and if you're dailying it, it could be a wheel bearing thing down the road. You could take this on a flat surface and kind of put your fingers on either side, push, and there shouldn't be any wobbles, right? To make it super dramatic, if you're pushing on either side and you're hearing that, which won't be that loud, I'm just doing it for dramatic effect, but if you're hearing that effect or feeling that, then it's not going to be perfect, because at the end of the day, this wood panel on my toolbox isn't perfectly flat, set up against this, which isn't perfectly flat, although it's pretty accurate. And then the wheel hub, of course, isn't going to be exactly perfect. So at the end of the day, you can't get anything perfect, but what you can do is mitigate that as much as possible to ensure that the spacer that you specifically got, when mounted and matched to your hub, doesn't have this issue. I mean, if I put this up against this spacer right here, I shouldn't hear anything at all pushing these. I mean, you're hearing some, this is the one I took off the passenger side, so you're hearing a little bit of dirt and anti-seize squishing under there. But if I'm pushing either side, I shouldn't feel any wobble, and these two actually paired nicely, thankfully. And this obviously is from the same company, ECS Tuning, which provide fantastic pieces. And if you watch my last video, you know the reason I chose these is because ECS manufactures these with 6061 T6 aircraft grade aluminum, and they're specifically made in-house to minimize the clearance to make it perfectly matched up to the bore and the wheel hub, so it's absolutely as perfect as possible. But again, still, when you get this or whatever spacer you go with, you need to do this test, which I'm going to show in a minute, up against the wheel hub to ensure that that in fact is the case and you don't have rub or wobble, because that's going to be the issue that most people talk about on why not to use spacers and to avoid spacers. It's one of the main reasons of why you wouldn't want to use them. This is a way to mitigate that and stay safe. So let's get this on and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so once the wheel is off, I'm just going to pull off the 15 that I had on there. And before I put the new 12 on, I'm going to put a little bit more anti-seize lubricant on there, which I always do. And it's only been a few months since I installed these, and no track days. So not a lot of heat build up to really cause any issues. But I'm just going to wipe a little bit excess off here and then take a little bit of the new anti-seize and just reapply right on the surface areas. Now we're going to take the new 12.5. So important things to look at, obviously make sure you have the right spacer. So for mine, 66.6 millimeter bore and a 5x112 bolt pattern. That's what you look for. Make sure it's good quality, reputable company. I choose ECS Tuning for mine. That's pretty much what I've always stuck with. And then, as I mentioned before, what you want to do is take your hands on either side, kind of press like this, and there shouldn't be any movement on any four of the corners. And you can even go every couple of inches. Yeah, that passes the test. If you were to have a little bit of movement or a little bit of wiggle, I mean, I probably wouldn't use those spacers. You might want to go swap them out. You can return them and get new ones from the same company. If it happens again, maybe try a different company. Maybe the quality just isn't there. But this has never failed me yet as far as getting a spacer that didn't quite fit or match up. For BMW from ECS Tuning, these do a really good job. So that is what you want to check on. So before, the wheel and the hub came together as one piece, okay? Now you're adding an additional third piece to the party, which is a smaller piece, and it's between the two larger pieces, and you're traveling at high speeds, high braking, maybe you're doing track days or just long drives to work on the highway, and all that's attached to the wheel hub. So that's taking a lot of that force. And if your wheel spacer isn't meshed up perfectly to make a nice neat sandwich, and it's causing some wobble, well, it's going to wobble in between these two pieces, and that's really going to put wear and tear in your wheel hub over time. You may feel it to the point where it's a bad vibration at high speed, or you may not notice it, but the wheel hub is taking the brunt. Maybe your suspension is doing a good job of absorbing that, or your tires, or whatever the case may be. But over time, you may have issues. So that's something you need to look for when you pick, choose, and install your wheel spacers. Don't forget this step. It'll save you in the long run. It's simple, takes 2 seconds to do on a flat surface, and then once it's on the hub, check the mating surface, make sure it's flat all the way around, no wobble at all. Trust me, it's gonna save you in the long run. So there you have it, guys. Super easy install. As you can see, doesn't take much, just a couple extra seconds just to make sure that you have that taken care of. And spacers can be super effective. They can be a great addition to your vehicle, to your build, better track width, better handling, aggressive stance, looks, all the above, or one of the above, whatever you're going for. They can be a great addition, but you just want to make sure that you're taking the time to pick the right one. All the right dimensions and measurements are correct. First of all, you order the right one. And then when you get it, it's up to us to do our due diligence to make sure that the exact part we got matches our car. Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that put our hands on it. If you're doing the installs yourself, or at least have the techs that you have do them, do that check and make sure they verify that with you to make sure that that is done correctly, so that it's you're doing your due diligence to make sure that there's no issues down the road with the wheel bearings, etc. So that make sure your car can last as long as possible and you stay safe. That's the most important thing. Heard horror stories before of super bad issues happening, and with the newer cars, might not be as much of an issue, but you could increase the wear of your car and kind of limit how long a wheel bearing or something of that nature or other parts could last if you don't do things correctly and take the extra second. So just remember, don't forget this step when you do it. It takes 2 seconds. And also the 12.5mm square setup is now officially on the G80. I think it looks better, and I'm gonna do an update video here soon on the ride quality, and I'll let you guys know. So thanks again, have a good one.